SV Math Teach here again. Today we're going to work on creating equations to describe trend lines in a scatter plot. So trend lines. The idea behind trend lines, we have a few videos on that previous to this one, but if the goal of a scatter plot is to build a line, and if the goal of the line is to make a prediction, then, well, we want to make sure we can do that. However, we also don't want to be limited to the fact that sometimes our graphs are only so big, but we want to predict outside of the range of a drawing or a graph. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, first and foremost, I want to remind you that when making a trend or a trend line, generally speaking, you're trying to observe what's going on in the data, and then you're trying to draw a line that averages out or represents that data best. And sometimes, like on the left, you'll see nonlinear, and sometimes on the right, you'll see something that appears to be linear. For the purposes of this video, we're going to focus on things that are linear only. So let's go ahead and look at how to do this and then an example. So first and foremost, how to create a linear equation. You can, of course, pause this and write these down in your notes, but you're going to choose 2 points on the trend line. You're going to calculate their slope. We know how to do that. You're going to choose one of the 2 points and your slope, and you're going to put it into this y equals mx plus b form. We're going to figure out what b is, and then we'll have all the information we need and we write our equation. That's it. This is only going to work for a linear equation. So one more time, linear simply means that you have a straight line, right? Mine didn't graph perfectly straight. I could have it snap, and then I have something that's a little bit more linear, right? So linear. So there are my 5 steps. I'm going to follow those 5 steps in one single example, and you can replay this anytime you need. It always works. Now, to speed up the example, I made up a graph. I used to own a coffee company, and what I knew on the coffee company was the warmer it was outside, the less cups of coffee I sold each hour. That ended up being a negative correlation, and I really did collect data. I'm sure this is just made up versions of that data, but I made myself a scatter plot. I highlighted to find out what correlation there was. It was negative. I made a blue line kind of down the middle to represent my trend line. And then at that point on the trend line, I wanted to do my 5 steps. Okay. So step number 1, choose 2 points from the line. I've already done that. Now, let's be clear. I'm going to erase some things. I'm going to erase this. I'm also going to erase all of these dots. The reason why I erase the dots is because the data makes the dots make the blue line, and then the blue line is all I care about. I don't need the dots anymore. You should not look at the dots after we make the line, right? Have faith in your line. Now at that point, what I wanted to do is I wanted to find points that I could easily interpret. So I picked a point down here. That looked like it was about 90 and 0, right? 90 this way and 0 that way. And I picked a point near the other extreme. That one was 40 this way and about 140 that way. Now, these dots might not be perfect, but I try to make them as good as I can. So I picked 90, 0 and 40, 140. And now I'm going to calculate the slope, and I'm going to have you kind of do this with me, right? So my slope formula is subtract your y's. So a reminder of slope is the xy. This is the first one, and this is the second one. Thinner pen. So I'm going to do the second y minus the first y, and the second x minus the first x. So 140 over negative 50 is negative 14/5. That's going to be negative 2.8. I'm going to go ahead and use a decimal here because I'm going to be calculating with it later. You could use the negative 14/5 would be just as good. Now, so step 1 is complete. Step 2 we just completed. Now step 3, choose a point. It doesn't matter which of the 2 points you pick. I'm going to pick 40 and 140 just because, well, because that's the one I'm picking. You could just as easily pick 90 and 0. So I'm going to go ahead and pick 40 and 140, and what I know about that is 40 is the x and 140 is the y. Now, the slope I just calculated. My slope is negative 2.8, right? I just calculated that right there. and it says, and write the equation. Now, write the equation in y equals mx plus b form. So watch what I mean by that. Y equals mx plus b is a slope-intercept form in a linear equation. And I'm going to substitute the things in it that I know. The 140 is my y value. The negative 2.8 is my m value. Right next to that is the x. That's 40. And plus b, I don't know yet. So I've substituted that in. Done. Step 4, solve for b. So now I need to solve this for b. I need to multiply 2.8 times 40. I don't have a calculator here, so 2.8, 32. All right, and 1 decimal, so 112. And it's negative, so 140 is negative 112, and b. I need to solve for b, so I'm going to get rid of the 112. It's negative, so I add 112 to eliminate the negative 112 to both sides. And I get 2 with a 5 and a 2. So my b value is 252. That's my y-intercept. Okay? So now I have everything that I need. It says step 5, write your equation. Equations are always going to be in y equals mx plus b form for this class. So I have y equals m x plus b form. There's my equation. Now, if I have to explain that equation, the slope, my negative 2.8, represents the change in the y value for every change in the x value. So I sell 2.8 cups fewer cups of hot coffee every time the degree of temperature goes up 1 degree. So I sell less each time. The y-intercept represents the number of cups sold if the temp were 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it's super cold, I'm going to sell 252 cups of coffee per hour. That'd be pretty awesome for me. And then the final piece is going to be, what do we do with predictions? Well, with predictions, the only challenge needs to be, look at the question carefully, identify what they're giving me, and then figure out, is that your y or is that your x? It's one or the other. Now, 10 degrees Fahrenheit goes along with, well, let's look up here. The temperature in Fahrenheit is your x. So I'm going to put that 10 in the x spot. So watch what I'll do. I'm going to take my y equals negative 2.8x plus 252. I'm going to substitute 10 into the x. So y equals negative 2.8x. I'll zoom in here. Take the x out, put a 10 in there. I'm going to multiply that and solve for y. So negative 28 plus 252. Once again, I don't have a calculator, but that's really just subtract 30 and then add a couple back on. So what's that going to be? 222, 223, 224. So I can predict how many cups of coffee I would sell at 10 degrees Fahrenheit. I would sell 224 cups. And that is how you not only create an equation, but predict using your equation of a trend line.